When we talk about size, particularly in the context of intimacy, what we are really uncovering is not so much a biological debate, but a psychological one. For generations, men have been conditioned to believe that the measure of their worth in the bedroom is determined in inches. It is a narrative that has been deeply embedded in culture, in media, in jokes, even in the way men compare themselves in private conversations. This myth, that size alone defines pleasure, has grown so powerful that has left many men chasing numbers rather than understanding the true mechanics of desire. But here is the truth. Women are not measuring men the way men are measuring themselves. Women are far more concerned with how they feel than with the ruler in the drawer. The obsession with size is, in many ways, a distraction. It pulls men away from the essence of intimacy. It makes them anxious about performance, about how they measure up, instead of focusing on presence, connection, and responsiveness. This insecurity can create a cycle where men show up with fear instead of confidence, and that energy alone can undermine attraction. Ironically, the very thing men believe will make them more desirable, the pursuit of being bigger, often distances them from what truly matters, understanding a woman's psychology, her body, and her emotional needs. Now let's consider where this myth comes from. Pornography, for one, has played a massive role in shaping unrealistic expectations. Men are bombarded with images of exaggerated masculinity, where size is glorified as the key to female satisfaction. But porn does not show as the reality of emotional intimacy, the subtleties of touch, the moments of deep connection that women consistently report as the real foundation of pleasure. By focusing on inches, men are chasing an illusion while missing the truth that the majority of women desire depth of experience, not just depth of penetration. It's also important to recognize that women are individuals. What one woman values is not what another does. For some, size might hold curiosity, but for most, what resonates is how she feels in your presence. Is she safe? Is she seen? Is she desired in a way that goes beyond her body? These questions determine her attraction far more than any measurement. When men become fixated on size, they miss the opportunity to cultivate the qualities that actually captivate women: confidence, attentiveness, and emotional intelligence. And here's something many men don't realize. When you lead with the belief that you are lacking, you unconsciously transmit that insecurity. Women can sense it. They feel the energy of doubt, the way you try to overcompensate, or the way you avoid deeper intimacy out of fear of being exposed. But when a man accepts himself fully, when he refuses to reduce his masculinity to inches, he radiates a confidence that women cannot ignore. He becomes magnetic, not because of what he carries physically, but because of the energy he embodies. So the myth of size as the ultimate factor must be dismantled if we are to have an honest conversation about what women actually want. Size may capture attention in a superficial sense, but it never sustains desire on its own. Desire is sustained by connection, by presence, by the way you make her feel emotionally alive and physically secure. And this is where the shift happens, from the external to the internal, from measurement to meaning. When a man finally realizes that he is not defined by a number, he is free. Free to focus on the things that truly matter, free to bring his full self into intimacy without fear, free to cultivate experiences that leave lasting impressions on the woman he shares himself with. Because at the end of the day, women don't remember inches. They remember how you made them feel. So if you take nothing else from this, take this one truth with you: stop counting and start connecting. That is where your real power lies. When we move beyond the myth of size, what becomes clear is that women care far more about how a man uses what he has than about any measurement. This is the difference between obsession with appearance and mastery of experience. Because intimacy at its deepest level is not mechanical, it's psychological. It's about rhythm, awareness, and the ability to tune into another person's body in a way that makes her feel both desired and understood. Think about it, a woman does not remember exact details in numbers. She remembers the moments when you made her lose herself, when you created an atmosphere that allowed her to surrender. That doesn't happen through inches, it happens through skill. Skill in intimacy is not just physical technique, but an entire mindset. It's the ability to slow down when needed, to speed up when she craves intensity, to notice the small signals, her breath, the way her body shifts, the subtle sounds that guide you without words. A man who pays attention to these things creates a sense of trust and excitement that no number on a ruler could ever achieve. One of the greatest truths about intimacy is that pleasure is relational, not anatomical. This means that your ability to make a woman feel alive depends less on what you bring physically and more on the emotional environment you create. When she feels safe with you, when she feels that you are attuned to her needs and not simply chasing your own gratification, her body responds with openness. Her attraction deepens because she knows she is not just being taken, but being cherished. That, more than anything, is what women find irresistible. Yet many men miss this entirely because they are so caught up in their own performance anxiety. They focus on trying to prove themselves rather than simply being present. But the men who master intimacy are the ones who can silence their own insecurities and step into the moment with full awareness. They are not distracted by comparison. They are locked into the reality in front of them, the woman they are with, her signals, her rhythm. This presence is what women crave because it assures them that they are not just bodies to be used, but individuals to be experienced. And here's where the conversation takes a deeper turn. Intimacy is a form of communication. Just like in any meaningful conversation, listening is often more important than speaking. In the same way, paying attention to her cues, being patient, being responsive, this is how you speak her body's language. Some men think they need grand gestures or extraordinary prowess, but in truth, the women who leave encounters feeling deeply satisfied do so because the man listened to them, not with his ears alone, but with his attention, his patience, his adaptability. This is why skill always outweighs size. A man who is average in measurement, but exceptional in attentiveness, will always outshine the one who is large but careless. Because a woman will never be impressed by something that does not make her feel. And at the end of the day, what women are seeking in intimacy is not performance, it is connection. So the real question men should be asking is not, am I enough in size, but am I enough in awareness? Am I paying attention? Am I present enough to create an experience she will never forget? That is where the true measure lies. When a man understands this, he stops chasing external validation and begins focusing on the internal mastery that actually captivates women. Because in the final analysis, women don't want men who are merely obsessed with inches. They want men who know how to turn moments into memories. They want partners who are skilled, attentive, and emotionally present. That is the intimacy that lingers long after the moment has ended. So let this settle within you. Greatness in intimacy is not about size, it's about skill. And skill is not something you are born with, it is something you cultivate. Which means every man has the power to become unforgettable, if only he learns to truly pay attention. When you strip away all the noise about physicality, what emerges very clearly is that women are far more invested in the emotional connection they share with a man than the technical details men obsess over. Intimacy, for her, is not just a physical act, it is an emotional experience. This is why some women can recall a man with deep fondness years later, not because of what he looked like or what he had, but because of how he made her feel. That's the dimension many men overlook when they reduce attraction and pleasure down to numbers and appearances. The emotional bond is the foundation upon which physical satisfaction is built. Without it, even the most physically gifted man will eventually feel empty in her eyes. You see, women crave the kind of intimacy that reassures them that they are not just bodies, but beings, cherished, valued, understood. When a man can establish that connection, every encounter takes on a weight and meaning far beyond the surface. Her body responds more openly, her guard comes down, and she allows herself to be vulnerable because she knows she is safe in his presence. What's interesting is that this emotional connection doesn't come from grand gestures alone. It comes from the small, consistent ways you show up for her. The way you listen when she speaks, the way you remember details that others overlook, the way you affirm her without making her feel as though she's being analyzed or judged. These moments of attentiveness create a trust that translates directly into the bedroom. Because once a woman trusts you emotionally, she will surrender to you physically. That is the deep psychological link between emotional connection and sexual desire. Men often underestimate the role of this bond. They think attraction is maintained only through confidence, appearance, or prowess. But those things can only take you so far. A woman can be impressed in the moment, but if she doesn't feel emotionally seen, she disconnects quickly. On the other hand, even if you don't have every deal, quality, If you make her feel understood, she stays. She invests, she responds. That's why the emotional connection is the real magnet. It holds her in ways physical factors never can. Think about how powerful this is. A woman may meet several men in her lifetime, but the ones she remembers most vividly are not always the most attractive or the most impressive. By society's standards, it is the man who made her laugh when she felt low, the one who understood her silence without needing words, the one who created a safe space where she could let her guard down. Those are the men she attaches herself to emotionally, and that attachment transforms every other dimension of their relationship. Now, this doesn't mean you need to lose your masculine edge or smother her with endless reassurance. It means you need to show depth, to balance strength with sensitivity, and to recognize that true influence comes not from force, but from connection. The man who learns to master this balance becomes irresistible because he offers something rare as an experience where a woman feels both desired and deeply understood. And here's the truth. Physicality fades, appearances shift, but the way you make someone feel is immortal. Years from now, she won't remember the specifics of every encounter, but she will remember the man who made her feel alive, the man who made her feel special, the man who touched her heart before he touched her body. That is what endures. So the challenge is clear: stop focusing solely on the surface and begin to cultivate the depth that creates lasting impact. Learn to build emotional bridges, not just physical ones. Because in the end, the emotional connection is not just an added bonus. It is the very thing that makes intimacy unforgettable. And if you take nothing else away, let it be this: women may notice what you look like, but they remember how you made them feel. That is the true measure of your power. When it comes to desire, one truth stands out clearly. Women are not drawn to the obvious, but to the subtle. They don't necessarily fall for the loudest man in the room, the one constantly boasting about his achievements or flaunting his possessions. Instead, they lean into the man who carries himself with quiet confidence, who understands that true strength does not need to shout. It's in the subtleties, the way he pauses before he speaks, the way his presence fills a room without him even trying, the way his calm energy draws others in, that women find themselves intrigued. You see, subtlety is powerful because it creates curiosity, and curiosity is the lifeblood of attraction. When a woman doesn't have you completely figured out, when she feels there's more to you than what you've revealed, her mind begins to work. She leans in. She wants to know more. This doesn't mean playing games or withholding for the sake of manipulation, but it does mean understanding the psychology of mystery. People value what they can't immediately define, and women are no different. They are drawn to men who leave them with questions rather than those who offer all the answers up front. Think about it. The men who are constantly trying to prove themselves often lose allure quickly. Their energy is scattered, their need for validation too obvious. But the man who isn't trying to impress, who is simply grounded in who he is, has an aura that cannot be ignored. Women notice it even if they can't articulate it. They'll describe him as different, intriguing, or captivating. And what they're really sensing is that subtle, unforced confidence that lingers long after he's gone. This subtlety extends into communication as well. A man who can say more with fewer words often has greater impact. A glance, a half smile, a well-timed silence can sometimes communicate desire more powerfully than a flood of compliments ever could. Subtle gestures, a light touch, a look that holds just a little longer than normal, plant seeds in her mind that grow far beyond that moment. It's not about doing less, it's about doing just enough with intention. There's also an important psychological aspect. Here, subtlety respects her intelligence. It assumes she can read between the lines, that she can sense what's unsaid. And women thrive on that kind of engagement. They don't want everything spelled out. They want to feel like participants in the dance of attraction, not passive recipients. Subtlety invites them in, gives them space to imagine, to anticipate, to build the story alongside you. This is why subtlety doesn't weaken masculinity, it amplifies it. Because it shows you are secure enough not to over-explain yourself, confident enough not to demand immediate recognition, and wise enough to let intrigue work in your favor. That's what makes it irresistible. A man who knows how to wield subtlety is a man who understands timing, presence, and restraint. And in relationships, those qualities often outlast the fleeting appeal of charm or physicality. What most men miss is that subtlety isn't about doing less, it's about creating more meaning in what you do. It's about precision, not absence. It's about leaving space for her to feel, to respond, to imagine. That's what elevates an interaction from ordinary to unforgettable. So here's the point: women are not only paying attention to what you do, but to how you do it. They notice the restraint, the calmness, the quiet power. They are drawn to the mystery it creates and the respect it communicates. And when you master this, you don't just attract attention, you command it effortlessly. Remember this: subtlety is not weakness, it is mastery. It is the art of saying more by saying less, of drawing her in without chasing, of holding space without demanding it. And if you can embody that, you'll find that the most powerful moves are not the loudest, but the quietest. Those are the ones that linger, the ones she replays in her mind long after the moment has passed. One of the greatest misunderstandings men have when it comes to women is this idea that physical appearance alone will hold a woman's attention. Yes, looks may draw her in, but what sustains her interest and deepens her attraction is not what's on the surface. It's the depth you carry within. Women are emotional and psychological beings. They are drawn to substance. And this is where emotional intelligence enters the conversation. It's not about being overly sensitive or catering to every whim, but about showing an awareness of yourself and of her in ways that most men simply overlook. Emotional intelligence is the ability to read the room, to sense what is unsaid, to pick up on the energy of the moment. It's knowing when silence is more powerful than words, when reassurance is more effective than advice, and when laughter is needed more than logic. For a woman, this isn't just attractive, it's magnetic, because it shows her you're not only connected to yourself, but also capable of connecting deeply with her. And when a woman feels understood, even without her having to explain everything, she feels safe. Safety is not always about physical protection, it's about emotional presence. This is why women are often more moved by how a man makes them feel rather than what he looks like or even what he provides materially. If she can feel seen, if she can feel that you're present with her in a moment, that connection runs deeper than anything external. And what most men miss is that emotional intelligence doesn't require dramatic gestures. It's not about constantly affirming her in exaggerated ways. It's in the small, consistent details. Noticing when her energy shifts, remembering something she said in passing, sensing when to give her space versus when to draw closer. But here's the beauty of it. Emotional intelligence isn't just about her, it's about you. A man who knows himself, who has emotional control, who doesn't let anger, fear, or insecurity dictate his behavior, becomes irresistible. Why? Because that kind of man is rare. Too many men are reactive, easily swayed by ego, or threatened by vulnerability. The man who demonstrates composure, who can feel deeply but also remain grounded, sends a powerful signal. I am a man who can be trusted with more than just surface-level connection. That kind of man doesn't just attract her attention. He earns her respect. Philosophically speaking, emotional intelligence is a sign of maturity. It reflects an understanding that life and relationships are not simply about winning or dominating, but about harmony. It's about balance. The ability to navigate tension without escalating it, to guide without controlling, to listen without judgment. And women, consciously or unconsciously, seek this balance. They want a man who can meet them in their complexity without diminishing it. Now, some men hear this and think it means becoming overly accommodating or submissive. But that's not emotional intelligence. That's insecurity disguised as kindness. True emotional intelligence doesn't weaken masculinity, it refines it. It says, I can be strong without being harsh. I can be present without being overbearing. I can feel without being ruled by those feelings. This combination is powerful because it bridges strength with sensitivity, and women are drawn to that bridge more than anything else. So when you think about what truly captures a woman's heart and keeps her invested, it isn't perfection, it's presence. It's the ability to engage with her not just physically, but mentally and emotionally in ways that leave her feeling valued, not just desired. That's what creates depth.